When the best drum corps in the world get together, they do it for one reason: to compete. And the judging of that competition is highly structured. The elements of each show are divided into specific categories or captions. Judges award points in each caption with a maximum possible score of 100. Although no corps has ever reached the perfect 100, tonight's DCI finals will see some scores edging into the 90s. And it is at this level of competition that the judging and the judgment calls get much more difficult. The largest segment of a corps is usually the horn line, and judging the horn line is an even larger task.
The responsibility of the brass judge is primarily to evaluate the degree to which the performers play together. When they play a difficult rhythmic pattern, the ability of the young people to perform that with precision and accuracy is our main responsibility. In the category of brass execution, we basically have to listen to the strength of the players when they're playing difficult passages, but we don't actually attribute credit to the difficulty of the music. That's done in the musical analysis category, which is it's done on a tape recorder, and it's a subjective, evaluative measure of their performance level. Basically, we want the ensemble feeling, which means sounding like one. And that's the whole concept of drum and bugle corps, performing together. And when a judge is listening to the brass line, he wants each and every individual to play the instrument properly with proper brass technique and to play together with his fellow brass players as a unit.
While a horn judge may look for that one big horn sound, the same sort of question to a drum judge got a very different response. What is the ideal? Is the ideal for a drum line to sound like one big drum?
Never, never, never. If they sound like one big drum, number one, the instruments are not tuned properly. The person that is making the money relative to the arranging and the scoring has not earned his freight. One sound is absolutely obnoxious.
At this level of competition, there are no obnoxious sounds. But what are the elements of a drum line that we can appreciate?
For a first-time viewer, the first thing they're going to look for is the uniformity within the percussion ensemble. And the second thing after that initial impression is made is what does the overall sound come out as. Uniformity is, just from a visual standpoint, if you look at all the snare drum players, were all the positions exact. Now that's the visual. And the next thing is what is the audio, which means what are they doing on the drum itself. Any deviation in that complete uniformity is an error, or what we call the tick point. Attacks, which means the initial beat of every musical phrase, releases are the end of the phrase, and in between the attack and the release really are where the majority of the errors occur, and it's what we call phrasing. Does everybody have the same interpretation, percussion-wise, of the brass music? Do they relate to the same meter, the same pulse, the same dynamic demands? Or are some of the players off in another world?
Because of the complexity of drum lines, Goodhart was emphatic about a judge's ability and training.
I cannot conceive anybody picking up a pad and a pen and attempting to adjudicate that has not performed in every segment in today's marching percussion ensemble. I think it is paramount.
While the sound of the drums and the bugles is the most basic element, the rest of the show is just as critically judged. This year, a new judging category or caption has been added called visual analysis. Now the performance is evaluated not only on the perfection with which it is done, but also on how difficult it is to do.
There is a new caption this year called visual analysis, which has slightly affected the shows. I still think the most effective performance done with the greatest degree of precision is going to win, but now the book or the repertoire becomes a factor, and we have more difficulty being used in the actual written marching book. We've always had analysis in brass and percussion for the last 3 or 4 years, so there aren't really significant changes, and like any new system of judging, it's going to take a while to break in, but the consistency of scores based upon the chorus performances has been excellent this year, and as the chief judge of this activity, I'm really thrilled at the way things have been going so far.
The new caption breaks down the evaluation of show design, and although it is related to the general effect of a show, it is still different. Are people doing a perfect rifle toss? That's general effect. Are 6 or 12 or 30 people tossing at the same time? That's visual analysis.
Visual analysis is intended to be very different from general effect. The general effect caption is meant to be a response caption and a credit for the actual design of the program. Essentially, general effect means how good is the quality of the design program, and what is the response which is evoked by that program, what kind of effort is put into it by the people who are performing the program. Whereas the analysis caption is exactly that, much more analytical as far as the difficulty of the program and how well it is performed from a distance. So that's the difference between them there. Those two captions are intended to be very different. There's a 4-point subcaption called demand or difficulty, and a 4-point subcaption called clarity or visual excellence. And there are criteria. The criteria essentially revolve around several words which we discuss within each of those two subcaptions. But no, there is no way of actually saying, most of the time, if one kind of a move is inherently more difficult than another. As we say, it depends. It depends upon the overall construction, it depends upon how you do it, it depends upon the variations. A simple rifle toss can be more demanding, more difficult if 12 people are doing it, which would give you more difficulty than if 6 people were doing the same kind of thing, or more demand, more problems can be created. So a move is not necessarily difficult, a move is not necessarily easy. It depends upon how one does it, how it's constructed, how it's fitted into the scheme of things. I helped to develop the visual analysis caption along with a couple of other instructors, so that makes me somewhat uniquely qualified, since I have all the answers.
But the answers are never easy to find, and no matter how the responsibilities are divided, each judge is on the line every show. Because once the show begins, it's still the opinion of the judge which rules.
The cores have been told a long time ago by me and all the judges who have had any kind of real relevance in the judging field that even ticks are subjective. If we wish to talk about over half of the score being subjective, we're lying. Everything is subjective. You have to evaluate an interval and say, is it wrong? To what degree is it wrong? And if you think the degree is wrong enough, then you put down the tick, which requires a subjective evaluation on the part of the judge. Now that we have, right now, what I guess the point we're trying to make about subjective versus objective is the judges have something like 60 points worth of sit down and say how good or bad it was, rather than tick captions, and I tend to think that ultimately we're going to be doing that with every single caption we have, because of the fact that running around trying to tick an art form or a gymnastic competition is sort of rather foreign to me. One of my comrades in arms in the judging community, Jim Unruh, says you don't go to the Louvre and tick the Mona Lisa, and I think that's sort of very appropriate about drum corps.
Lines have the most members, around 50 in the top 12 corps. Their instruments are sophisticated with a full range of horn voices to achieve each corps' special sound. Drum lines have about 30 members, many different types of instruments, and again, a full range of voices.
Ready, move, bum, bum, bum.
About 30 color guard members interpret music with flags and rifles using intricate choreography. And then it all comes together with spectacular results. Like many corps, the Crossmen from Delaware City, Pennsylvania have 2 drum majors, and the combined energy of Jill Moyer and Brett Mascaro strikes the perfect balance between unity and leadership.
I try to get along with everyone. At least know everyone's name. That's my thing. Make sure you know everyone's name in the whole corps and be able to talk to them. You know, for whatever reason, someone gets hurt, or you have to talk to someone about this problem. They have a problem with the music, or they have a problem with this person, and oh, the set isn't right because this person's not just over here, and he's going to yell at him. So you got to be able to go over and just say, hey, take a break for just a second, you know, and stand back a minute. Okay, now what's the problem? And be able to calm them down and things like that. Because if you're always on top of them, they're going to be always on top of you. So you have to be very, you have to think a lot. If I see the corps down and they're all like this, that just makes me go, okay, it's time to turn on, and I can do that anytime. It's just the times. Last week we had a show in New Orleans, and kids all got off the bus, and they were all really tired and bad. And I had to get ready in 40 minutes and get dressed and warm up, and they weren't warmed up or anything, and I just was walking around, this is my chance, and you just turn them on, and you just say, come on, get going.
Come on, Contras, snap. I'm telling you, I'm gonna get my little brother out here to show you how to snap those horns. Going on. Resume.
Being a leader for this corps is very exhausting because most of the people in this corps are very knowledgeable about what they're doing. And so basically what we have is 128 leaders on the field. And at times it's difficult for them to look at one person and say, that's my leader, I should just, be quiet and listen to what they say. So basically we do have, like I said, 128 leaders on the field. They tend to get very anxious, worried, excited before a show. We tried a principle in the last couple weeks about bringing everyone back down to a zero level, mentally and physically, totally relaxed mentally and emotionally. And we start then by building back up as we get nearer to the beginning of the show, but not too soon, because if they get too high too psyched before the show, they tend to get over anxious, and their bodies get tight and their minds get cluttered. So it's basically a clearing of the mind and a relaxing of the body.
Whether relaxing a corps before performance or sparking them to explode on the field, drum majors are the center of attention. For the Cavaliers, that attention is on Jeff Fiedler alone. While the Cavies have a more structured system of leadership, the last word belongs to Jeff. And in many ways, he will act as half corps member, half staff member.
We like to say that the Cavaliers, the guys themselves, run their corps as much as possible, and we run it from the top down, and one drum major is more suitable than two for us, because that way it's just, when it comes back, who's to blame, or who's at fault, it'll go back to me, and it just goes down that way. We try to take as much responsibility on our own and take it off the management's shoulders.
Jeff is just organized, personified. He's tremendous. Without Jeff, I don't know where this corps would move. He spends about 18 hours a day doing detail work, just year-round, whether it's housing kids, whether it's calling kids on the phone, whatever it might be. He's just constantly working outside of rehearsals. Jeff is probably the best one I've ever seen or ever been involved in, and it's going to be a great loss to lose it.
When a corps loses a drum major, it loses an important element of its show. Dan Verhusen of the Madison Scouts takes his role during performance very seriously, and he is both conductor and showman.
As far as showmanship goes, that all, I feel, goes along with the emotion that I get from the music and the emotion that I'm trying to give to the corps. I feel there's like a never-ending chain where if I start the corps on a good feel and they give me a good feel, push some more emotion back into that, and they'll push some more emotion back into me, and I'll try to get some more emotion from the crowd, which comes into me, and then I'll try to relay that back to the corps. It's kind of it's a long, never-ending chain, and hopefully it always goes for the better. Basically, I love getting reactions from the crowd or just watching the reactions from the crowd. And it's nice that sometimes if the corps is not doing such a good job and the crowd's still giving us wonderful ovations, you can kind of relay to the corps that they're not correct this time. Pull a little more out and make them stand up twice as long. Most of the showmanship, I guess, comes from inside my heart, and this being my last year with the Scouts, I'm giving it all I've got to try to go for #1 in Birmingham.
We have shirts, we have pillows, hats, buttons, bumper stickers, decals, jewelry, jackets, yearbooks, shorts, yeah, shorts.
gum saver? It looks exactly like our helmet. And you put your gum on, cover it up, and it's still fresh the next day.
That is the tackiest thing I have
I
ever
was
seen.
I was out there to speak at their banquet over the off season. They gave me one of those just for my own treasury.
So, are you using it?
Oh, certainly.